Chapter 1. Calvin eased the door shut behind him. The soft click echoed in the stillness, unsettling the usual hush of his space. He lingered in the doorway, one hand still on the handle, his eyes scanning the space with practiced precision. Everything looked the same. The battered desk, strewn with wires and circuit boards, the sagging bed in the corner, the scuffed floorboards, all undisturbed. Yet something was different, as if the room had exhaled in his absence and hadn't quite remembered how to inhale again. Sunlight slanted through the old window, bending in strange angles through old glass, dust motes drifting in the beams like ash suspended mid-fall. Calvin tensed, his skin prickling. A soft noise broke the silence. Scritch, scritch, plastic against teeth. His pulse jumped. His gaze darted, quick and sharp, until it landed on the nightstand. There, half hidden in shadow, sat a creature. "Rat!" Calvin growled. But it wasn't. He didn't know what it was. No one remembered their name. Just another forgotten thing crawling out of the world's ruins. He had seen its kind before, relentless, hungry. All he knew for certain was they ate plastic. It was irresistible to them. It's what they were made to do. It was long and wiry, its limbs lean, its coat dust-colored and too tidy for a normal wild rodent. Its clear, focused eyes met his. It didn't flinch, it didn't run, it kept chewing. Tiny paws moved with unsettling intent, sorting through shards of plastic, not eating, but dismantling. Calvin coiled up with tension. It had found that photo, Brooklyn's photo. His stomach dropped. The frame was cracked, teeth marks gouging its edges. The top corner of the image was exposed. Brooklyn, caught mid-laugh, arms slung around him like he belonged there. The creature paused, head tilting slightly, then lowered its teeth toward the photo. Calvin moved on instinct. The thing leapt, grabbing the photo as it bolted. Calvin's hand hit the nightstand with a thud, missing the creature's tail by inches as it dove through the open window frame. Gone. He stood frozen, blood rushing in his ears. Then he turned, crossed the room, and grabbed his rifle. The old BB gun was worn smooth in all the places his hands naturally fell. He checked the chamber. Loaded, only one shot. He yanked open the drawer and poured through the tin of BBs. 3 left. "Damn it," he muttered. Not enough for comfort, but enough to chase. He slipped them into his pocket, slung the rifle across his back, and stepped outside. The cold bite of the air greeted him like a slap. Wind threaded through the trees, brushing past him in icy fingers. The air smelled of pine and rust, of something older and deeper. Up ahead, just past the remnants of a twisted metal sign buried in ivy, the creature paused, framed by sunlight, photo still clutched tight. "You don't get to take that," Calvin said. "That's mine." The thing skittered away, but didn't flee like prey. It moved with purpose, leading rather than escaping. It felt wrong. Calvin's senses told him to be careful. He wasn't. He followed. Just beyond the edge of the forest, Calvin dropped to a crouch. He scooped a handful of damp soil and crushed leaves, smeared them over his sleeves and face until his skin blended into the forest's earth-toned hush. Camouflage. It wouldn't help much, but the habit from hunting this forest stuck. He moved into the trees. The forest accepted him like it remembered him, roots coiling from the ground like the twisted bones of forgotten giants. The light came in thin blades, catching in brambles and low-hanging limbs. Calvin's boots barely whispered as he stepped across the soft, soaked ground. The signs were subtle. A slight scuff in the moss, the fragile imprint of a paw, just deep enough to catch moisture. But most telling were the drag marks. Irregular grooves where the photo scraped against the earth. Brooklyn's face was being dragged through the mud. He clenched his jaw and kept moving. His fingers brushed the worn edge of his rifle. He wasn't chasing just another keepsake. He was retrieving that one. The forest grew darker as the sun dipped behind the hills, shadows threading together into a low hum of silence. The cabin was fading behind him now, swallowed by distance and trees. He crouched again, studying another print, fresh, the paw pads still glistening with moisture. The drag mark beside it had deepened. The photo was catching, tearing maybe. His gut twisted. He pressed on. Nearly a mile in, and the signs were getting harder to spot. Then, movement. He froze. There, framed by gnarled roots and a curtain of fern, was the creature. It was still. The photo was cupped in its hands like something precious. Its ears twitched, but it didn't bolt. It wasn't chewing, wasn't running. It was looking at the photo. He had shot dozens of these things, but this was new. They didn't do things like that. Calvin's breath came slower. He lifted the rifle and leveled it. One steady breath, one squeeze. The BB snapped through the air. It caught the creature's ear, a clean graze. The rat thing flinched, stumbled. Not fear. Confusion. It shook its head, touched its wounded ear, blinked as though it had never felt pain before, then darted into a patch of ferns. He tracked it, careful and low. The blood trail was faint but growing. Near a crooked tree root, the creature appeared again. It set the photo down, deliberate, as if placing it rather than dropping it, and turned to look back at him. Its gaze met his. A long pause stretched between them. Calvin raised the rifle again. He could have just walked up, picked it up, but that felt like surrender, like it had let him win. He fired. The BB struck its shoulder. The cry it made was unusually harsh, sharp, piercing. It vanished into the underbrush, swallowed where Calvin couldn't follow. Calvin stepped forward, knees bending slowly until he knelt beside the photo. He reached out with steady fingers and brushed away the grit and debris clinging to Brooklyn's face. Even smudged and torn, her smile shone through. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Calvin tucked the photo into the inner pocket of his jacket, pressing it flat like it was something sacred. Then he turned, squinting at the shadows stretching longer across the forest floor. The light was dying fast. The sun had dipped below the treetops, and the fading glow made everything look less familiar. Even the trail back home. He shouldn't be out here. Not now. Not with the dark coming. Abram's one rule had always been simple. Don't be in the forest after dark. And not just because it was easy to get lost. As he crested a small rise, a familiar sight stopped him. Two rusting cars sat buried in the ground, sticking out like broken teeth. Their once sleek frames were now weather-worn and decaying, taken back by moss and time. The forest had nearly swallowed them whole. He drifted toward them, slowing as his fingers brushed the cool, ridged metal of one fender. These cars had been his hideout once, back when he was little and saw the woods as more playground than threat. Calvin climbed onto the hood of the nearest car. The metal creaked under his weight, but held. He sat down, letting the quiet of the forest press in, letting the tension in his shoulders uncoil, just a little. He pulled the photo from his pocket again. In his head, her voice stirred. She would have laughed if she knew he was going through all this over a picture. "I've got more, you know," she'd tease, probably holding up a whole pile from that shoebox of memories she kept like a shrine. Brooklyn was caught mid-laugh, her arm yanking him into the frame. Wind tangled her hair. Her eyes were bright, fearless. She'd always been like that, pulling him into things he didn't want to do, dragging him out of whatever dark place he'd slipped into, like she'd already decided he didn't belong there, like she could see through the walls he built and never gave a damn they were there. In the photo, he looked reluctant, half smiling, jaw clenched, as if trying not to show he was enjoying it. He remembered muttering something under his breath that day, something sharp and unnecessary. And still, she'd smiled like she hadn't heard it, or like she had, and refused to let it ruin the moment. What had he even been mad about that day? He couldn't remember. All he remembered was her. He folded the photo and tucked it carefully away, like maybe he could fold the feeling with it. He slid off the hood and turned to leave. Something dark caught his eye, a smear of blood at the base of a tree. Calvin squatted down, fingertips brushing the fresh trail. Another mark, farther up, thin and sharp across the bark. The trail was headed back toward the cabin. He stared at it, willing it to mean something else. An injured raccoon, a hawk's failed catch, anything. But deep down, he knew. Each step he took after that felt heavier. The trail carved a crooked path through the undergrowth, and it never wavered, like it knew exactly where it was going. The rat, or whatever it was, hadn't panicked. It hadn't bolted without direction. It had gone somewhere on purpose. His stomach twisted. He tried to tell himself it was instinct, some wounded thing running blindly toward shelter. But it didn't fit. The way it had paused, looked at him, set the photo down like it understood what it was doing. This wasn't instinct. It was intent. That thing had come here for a reason, not just a free meal. It made sense now, in a sick, sudden way. Abram. Abram had a way of drawing in people and things. He was old, but full of history. Everyone knew who Abram was. They knew he could be helpful. If he wanted to be. Many came here to the cabin. Not all of them people. Not all of them kind. Strays, Abram had called them. The kind that didn't knock when they arrived. The kind that didn't come asking. And now Calvin, with all the genius of someone acting on impulse, had taken a shot at one. Ran it straight back to the only place that mattered. The cabin. He didn't need to imagine Abram's face when he realized. He could already see it. Abram standing in the doorway, arms crossed, silent. No lecture, no shouting. Just that look. Heavy. Disappointed. Letting the weight of the moment crush Calvin all on its own. That was always worse. Another mistake. Another night where one dredge kid and too many bad decisions tangled into a knot he couldn't undo. The trees thinned ahead, and the cabin sagged into view, a battered shape swallowed by the growing dark. Smoke curled faintly from the stovepipe, barely visible in the dimming light. One of the shutters flapped loose in the wind, tapping against the wall in an unsteady rhythm. Calvin slowed his steps. The trail of blood veered toward the edge of the porch, then disappeared beneath it. His hand instinctively brushed the rifle at his back. He knew it was empty. The last rounds sitting quietly in his pocket. It was just weight pulling at his shoulder, and not much comfort. None of this should have happened. Not like this. He scanned the clearing, noting the silence. No sign of movement around the woodpile or the front step. A single light inside the window glowed soft and steady, casting golden lines across the warped glass. Calvin stood still just outside the tree line, his breath fogging in the cold air. He didn't step forward, not yet. A hollow feeling gnawed at him. He should have ended it back there, should have landed that last shot. That thing hadn't just stolen a photo. It had torn something loose in him. He liked to think of Brooklyn as just Winstead's sister. Nothing more. It was hard to keep believing that when losing a picture made him so reactive, so angry. He stared down at the cabin from the edge of the trees, shadows pooling at his feet. And all he could think was, if only I hadn't missed.